In February 1995, a bank that had survived for 233 years through wars, revolutions, and the Great Depression, collapsed in a matter of days. It had financed the Louisiana Purchase. It had counted the Queen of England among its clients. And it was brought down not by an army, not by a crisis, but by a single 28-year-old trader and one secret account. This is the story of how one man destroyed the oldest merchant bank in Britain and how a single number, 88888, hid a billion-dollar lie. To understand the shock, you have to understand what Barings was. Founded in 1762, it wasn't just a bank, it was an institution. For over 2 centuries, it had been at the centre of British finance. People called it the sixth great power of Europe, alongside the major nations themselves. By the 1990s, Barings was respectable, old, and trusted, the kind of place where nothing ever went wrong. And that reputation, that sense of safety, is exactly what blinded everyone to what was coming. Enter Nick Leeson. Born in 1967 to a working-class family, he had no university degree from an elite school, no privileged background, but he was sharp, ambitious, and hungry. He worked his way up through the back offices of London banking until in 1992, Barings sent him to Singapore. His job? To trade on the Singapore International Monetary Exchange. And at first, he looked like a genius. Leeson was supposed to do something simple and low risk, arbitrage. Buy in one market, sell in another, pocket the tiny difference. Safe, boring, profitable. But there was a flaw in how Barings ran Singapore. Leeson was in charge of both the trading desk and the back office that was supposed to check the trades. In other words, he was both the player and the referee. Early on, one of his junior traders made a mistake that cost about £20,000. To hide it, Leeson opened a special error account, numbered 88,888. In Chinese culture, 8 is a lucky number. This account would become the unluckiest in banking history. Instead of reporting losses, Leeson started hiding them inside account 88888. A small loss here, a bigger one there. And because he controlled the books, no one in London could see what was really happening. On paper, Leeson was a star, reportedly earning the bank tens of millions in profit. In reality, the losses were quietly piling up in the dark. By the end of 1994, account 88888 was hiding losses of around £200 million. And Leeson had a choice: confess or gamble his way out. He gambled. To dig himself out, Leeson started making bigger and bigger bets on the Japanese stock market, the Nikkei index. His strategy was simple and terrifying. He bet that the market would stay stable, hovering above 19,000 points. As long as the market stayed calm, he'd earn enough to cover the hidden losses and maybe even erase them. So he doubled down, then doubled again. This is a trap psychologists call loss chasing, the same instinct that keeps a gambler at the table, convinced the next hand will fix everything. Each bet was larger than the last. Leeson was now controlling positions worth billions, far beyond anything Barings had authorized, and still the warning signs were ignored. London kept wiring him money to cover his margin calls, assuming their star trader knew what he was doing. They were funding their own destruction. Everything depended on one thing: the market staying quiet. And then, on the morning of January 17th, 1995, the ground in Japan literally started to shake. At 5:46 a.m., a magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck the city of Kobe. It was one of the worst natural disasters in modern Japanese history. And in the financial markets, it triggered exactly what Leeson feared most: panic. The Nikkei didn't stay calm. It plunged, and every single one of Leeson's massive bets was now moving against him at a speed and scale that was impossible to survive. Instead of pulling back, Leeson did something almost unbelievable. He bet even more, trying to single-handedly push the market back up. He bought enormous positions, hoping to force the Nikkei to recover. It didn't work. The losses didn't just grow, they exploded. Within weeks, the hidden hole in account 88888 had ballooned to £827 million, about $1.3 billion. That was twice the bank's entire available trading capital. Barings didn't just have a loss. Barings was insolvent. It was already dead and didn't know it yet. On February 23rd, Leeson knew the game was over. He left a note that simply said, "I'm sorry," and he fled, flying out of Singapore with his wife, trying to disappear. Back in London, executives finally opened the books on account 88888. What they found was catastrophic. There wasn't enough money in all of Barings to cover what Leeson had lost. The Bank of England scrambled over the weekend to organise a rescue. There was none to be had. On February 26, 1995, Barings, the bank that had survived 233 years, was declared bankrupt. Days later, it was sold to the Dutch bank ING for the symbolic price of £1. £1 for an institution that had helped finance nations. Leeson was arrested in Germany, extradited to Singapore, and sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. He served around 4 years in Changi prison, and while inside, he was diagnosed with colon cancer, which he survived. So how does one person destroy a 233-year-old bank? The answer isn't really about one rogue trader. It's about a system that let him be both the gambler and the referee. No one checked. No one questioned the star making suspicious profits. Everyone assumed that because Barings was old and respected, it must be safe. That single assumption, and that nothing could go wrong, is what made everything go wrong. Barings didn't die because of bad luck or an earthquake. It died because no one was watching the one account that mattered. If you found this story as wild as I did, there are dozens more just like it. Companies that destroyed themselves in ways you wouldn't believe. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.